For this specific type of encounter, where residents across Turkey have complained to local authorities that some type of invisible force made from pure hate is attacking them. Tradition suggests the possibility that one specific type of entity, typically associated with a type of fire, and that is translated the poisonous wind in English, may be at fault. This species of jinn, or individual jinn, appears in pre-Islamic, Islamic, and even Jewish Old Testament lore and is considered deadly. Every year, thousands of people across the world, from the Middle East to America, have claimed to have experienced a traumatic paranormal event, where they and their families have struggled to get grips with an unexplainable phenomena. Usually, they're dismissed as hoaxers or highly delusional and left to cope by themselves. But what happens when the government decides to get involved and take these events very seriously? The year was 2012, and Zeki Toprak, a humble street vendor from the town of Siirt in Turkey, began to notice small, odd occurrences manifesting around his home. At first, him, his wife, and 4 children would routinely lose small objects like items of clothing, remote controls, mobile phones, etc., only for them to be found in places where they should not be. While what initially appearing to be nothing more than a series of harmless pranks pulled by the Zeki's young children quickly developed into an international media circus, where the Turkish government itself opened an official investigation to solve what would become one of the country's deadliest paranormal mysteries to date.
Evlerinde 5 ayda 500 yangın çıkan Toprak ailesi eşyaların kendiliğinden alev aldığını iddia.
A year earlier in 2011, and thousands of kilometers away, Ibrahim al-Dasu'i, a 61-year-old Egyptian man, stumbled out of his Kuwait City apartment block, totally engulfed in flames, where he collapsed and was rushed to the hospital. His neighbors say that they heard a huge bang that shook the entire building with a force so strong that his front door was blown clean off its hinges and flung into the opposite apartment. However, when the civil defense units arrived at the scene, they could not find the source of the explosion, nor even any burn marks. Somehow, al-Dasu'i had managed to survive bursting into flames, while not leaving a trace of fire behind. But what connects this one event to a series of anomalous occurrences that would plague the family of Zeki Toprak hundreds of miles away in Turkey a year later? Well, it was part of a string of unexplained events that impacted families across Turkey, Italy, Egypt, and Kuwait from 2011 to 2021. Occurrences that suggested that the cause of these anomalies were not only supernatural, but extremely aggressive. The year was 2021, and as the world was trying to get grips with a global event that was, and for some still is, unprecedented in nature, for one Turkish family in Kastamonu, northern Turkey, a smaller but deadlier mystery was unfolding. Over a period of 2 weeks, a series of small fires would erupt in the vicinity of their 2-story house and a barn next to it. According to Turkey's Ihlas news agency, the fact that fires broke out in areas without installed electricity led to the family to believe that the source of these instances are paranormal in nature. Unfortunately, this event is just one of several that seems to be targeting poor and working-class families across the country. While many of these cases allude to human causes done for either fame or financial compensation, many remains completely unexplainable. The most famous example of this phenomena began back in early 2012 and concerned the Toprak family from the town of Siirt. who we mentioned at the beginning of this episode and in a previous episode. The Toprak family case study is unparalleled, as the Turkish government felt compelled to launch a full-scale public inquiry into the phenomena, whereupon they initially acknowledged to the international media that a hostile supernatural force was hunting one of its districts. The first odd occurrence, beginning several months before the government's involvement, was when Zaki Toprak had to call a locksmith to fix his front door that had inexplicably became locked while him and his family were outside. In the days and the weeks that would follow, items of clothing and other subjects would disappear, only to reappear in other parts of the house or even outside of the home. And with each subsequent occurrence, there would be an escalation in the severity of the anomaly. Their washing machine would begin its spin cycles without anyone touching it, and on one occasion when Mrs. Toprak was preparing breakfast, when she stepped into another room and returned seconds later, all of the plates had been transported from the kitchen to out into the garden, where they were found neatly arranged. However, this was just the beginning. On the night of the 13th of August 2012, the family were woken up by the smell of smoke and discovered a fire in their simple 3-room residence. Almost all of the family's belongings and furniture had been reduced to ashes, and from this point, various other household items would catch fire spontaneously. Although firemen quickly extinguished the numerous blazes that would spring up, they were baffled as to how it started, since they had all erupted well away from readily combustible materials. Meanwhile, at school, the eldest daughter, Melek Toprak, saw fire spontaneously erupt around her in full view of her classmates and teachers. After her coat, books, and several other items belonging to her were extinguished, her teachers searched her for any material or substance which could have caused the fires, but nothing was found. Eventually, and in the interest of safety, the family moved their bedding and other belongings into a balcony where they slept for nearly 2 weeks. That was until the fires even followed them outside. The local and international media, including CNN Turk, became aware of this extraordinary case when Mr. Toprak appealed for help from the Siirt district governor, Ahmed Aydin, who, accompanied by a Canal 56 television crew, promptly visited, interviewed the family, and inspected the damage. Although no fires erupted during this time, one cameraman felt a burning sensation beneath his feet and found that a section of the sole of his shoe had melted. This was enough for the governor to declare the problem a transcendent event, confirming for at least a while the government acknowledgement of a genuine paranormal threat. 4 months after the initial fires began, the rector of Siirt University, Professor Murat Erman, was assigned to the case to see if science could shed light on the situation. Whatever their intentions were, Professor Erman had assembled a task force that included a psychiatrist, a sociologist, and several engineers who set up cameras to monitor key points throughout the house. With the assistance of the police, the family members were interviewed, whereupon the first red flag appeared. During the month-long investigation, where stationary cameras had already been set up throughout the home, each flare-up would only occur just outside of the camera's limited field of view, as if whatever was causing them were playing a game of hide-and-seek. Ultimately, it appeared as if none of the investigative team actually witnessed any of the fires erupt, even though they were present when they were burning. Consequently, over the next several months, a detailed 3-page official report from the government concluded that any paranormal cause for the occurrences were at best negligible. This damning report even went on to suggest that the family was hoaxing the entire phenomena, stating that at one point, the children had been caught with cigarette lighters bought in from outside that did not belong to the parents. However, this still left some questions unanswered. First of all, the report neglected to mention that the Toprak's neighbors also witnessed the fires take place, It also failed to mention that the phenomena followed the daughter to her school, whereupon her classmates and teachers testified that they personally saw the flames magically materialize in front of them. By March 2013, over a year after the nightmare had begun, the family had already moved to 6 different residences, and each time the fires followed them. In the 7 months since the anomaly first manifested, it was claimed that no fewer than 300 blazes had occurred around them. How the family has fared since then is unclear. However, during the midst of the media storm that had flared up around them, they made their largest move yet, to 140 km away from their home, hoping for one final time that they'll be able to outrun the phenomena. Speaking to the press, the father expressed exhaustion, not only due to the strange fires haunting them, but also the public embarrassment that came from the media scrutiny and the subsequent destruction of his family's reputation, where they were now officially labeled as frauds in a government report. In the West, typically, these kind of events would be classified under the category of poltergeist activity, whereupon the cause of the fires may not actually be the work of spirits, but the buildup of psychic energy related to a child about to begin adolescence. Hence why the only documented case of the fires being recorded outside of the home happened at the daughter's school in her classroom. According to media reports, these fires never followed other individual family members to other places, except when they were together as a group. Turkey has seen a number of these types of events over the past decade, but typically, the anomaly has always been highly localized, sticking to one specific area only, like a house. Very rarely, if at all, does it follow the victims to other locations, implying that the Toprak's home was never haunted to begin with, nor was the family the actual target. The only person at risk here was the daughter, who was either an artist or the target of something anomalous. If it was the latter, then who or what could have been targeting her?
The small Egyptian village of Mena Safor is under siege. Many of its residents believe that a paranormal entity is manifesting instances of an anomalous fire across the village, leaving entire neighborhoods on edge. Several houses have spontaneously ignited, leading to villagers to blame the Djinn, a non-corporeal entity from Arabian mythology. This is El Saad Shabana. His house caught fire.
فجأة لقينا دخانة طالعة، دخانة سوداء وحريق شاب كبير. طبعا تكتلت أهل البلد ودخلنا وكسرنا الشبابيك ودخلنا بالطفايات ودخلنا بالمية بنطفي. الحاجة ما بتنطفاش، ما تطفاش إلا بكلمة الله أكبر وبصوت عالي. 10 دقايق بتكون نهت الشقة بالكامل. الحريقة اتنقلت من البيت ده، راحت بيت واثنين وثلاثة واربعة وخمسة وستة وسبعة في نفس اليوم.
Local government and civil defense departments are aware of the situation and have fire engines deployed regularly to deal with the outbreaks.
شاف في ذعر وهلع وقلق كل الأطفال في الشوارع، لا حد بروح مدارس ولا حد بروح دروس ولا أطفال عارفة تذاكر ولا حد عارف يعيش في بيته، كل الناس قاعدة في الشارع.
However, the state government authority Al-Azhar al-Sharif, an Islamic scientific body and the largest religious institution in Egypt, have ruled out any supernatural cause, concluding that the likeliest reasons for the ongoing phenomena are environmental factors. This has resulted in the villagers to take the matter into their own hands, with eyewitnesses testifying that Islamic invocations have been the best deterrent to dealing with the fires. The mosques across the area have resorted to broadcasting verses of the Quran and prayers on their loudspeakers to mitigate the damage.
The primary suspects of these fires are the Djinn, a human-like species, invisible to the naked eye, and composed of fire, heavily referenced in the Islamic scripture and a core component of both Turkish and wider Middle Eastern religious folklore as real beings. The Quran states that Allah created 3 types of beings from 3 substances: humans made of earth, angels made of light, and Jinn made of fire. The Jinn are not necessarily evil, but also not necessarily good. Instead, they're comparable to humans, having a variety of personalities and temperaments. However, two of the most feared type of jinn come under the collective category of the shaitan, which in English is comparable to demons, and the ifrit, a viciously dangerous class of shaitan. Belief in the jinn predates Islam, where in some cultures they were simply known as fire spirits. In parts of ancient Persia, they were thought to be the spirits of those who were severely mentally ill when they were alive, appearing at night and disappearing with the sunrise. Those who believed in them were called Majus, meaning fire worshippers. This pre-Islamic understanding persists till this day in other parts of the MENA region, in particular amongst the Tuareg people in the Sahara. According to their folklore, they were at one time so in tune with these spirits, they even had the ability to control them. But this is just folklore, and amongst the majority of the modern-day Tuareg and other North African and Middle Eastern communities, the jinn are not viewed as a legitimate threat that can easily be interacted with. Instead, they're considered as a part of religious dogma, with no tangible presence in everyday reality. This is because in most instances, whenever a person believes that they may have interacted with one of these entities, a rational explanation can be found out, but not always. In 2010, the Kuwaiti newspaper Al-Anba published a story surrounding the terrifying haunting of a family that were victims of multiple poltergeist incidents lasting well over half a decade. The story, which was then republished by the news outlets Emirates 24/7, explained how every few weeks, at exactly the same time twice a day, a young father and wife and children would endure a strange phenomena manifesting in their suburban villa. Like clockwork, small fires would erupt at exactly 5 a.m. and 5 p.m. in various parts of their home with zero explanation. According to interviews given to the media, he and his family would often hear the cries of phantom children during the phenomena. This was something even corroborated by the civil defense's firefighting officers, who apparently also heard the cries of phantom children on several of the numerous occasions they were called to the villa. The harmless but destructive phenomena had begun when they had moved into this villa back in 2004 and had occurred over 40 times over the next 6 years. Fortunately, a quick fix to the problem came in the form of a cassette recordings of the Holy Quran, which the father was recommended to constantly play in order to mitigate any paranormal activities from occurring in the home. Unfortunately, the cassette players would often catch light in what seemed to be an effort to stop him from exorcising the home. After seeking further religious help, he went on to explain that an imam confirmed that the house was indeed haunted by the jinn, but these specific spirits were not intentionally being malicious nor wanted to harm them. They were just disturbed by the human presence in their home and wanted them gone. So eventually, the family relocated to another villa and the phenomena ceased, leaving nothing behind but confused firemen and personnel from the Criminal Evidences Department failing to rationally identify the causes of the blazes.
Ben daha önce böyle bir şeylerle karşılaşmadım. Yani ilk defa burada karşılaştım. Yani böyle bir şey ben hayatımda görmemiştim yani gerçekten. Afat geldi, gaz ölçümü falan yaptılar. Gaz ölçümü yok. Köy genelinde zaten ev halkına, yani yanan evlerin halkı için uyku falan yok. Yani onlar gece gündüz yatamıyorlar. Köy halkı için de yani psikolojikmen, yani çocuktan tut ta 70'e, yani 7'den 70'e kadar bizim psikolojimiz hepsi bozulmuş.
For this specific type of encounter, where residents across Turkey have complained to local authorities that some type of invisible force made from pure hate is attacking them, tradition suggests the possibility that one specific type of entity, typically associated with a type of fire, and that is translated the poisonous wind in English, may be at fault. This species of jinn, or individual jinn, appears in pre-Islamic, Islamic, and even Jewish Old Testament lore and is considered deadly. We intentionally did not mention its original Arabic name in this video, because there's always going to be that one person in the comments who will try to seek out this being, as if they've never seen a horror movie in their life. Anyway, in the 18th century, the German theologian Johann Gottfried Eichhorn wrote about the unique attributes of this entity and why it's important to jinn and demonic lore. Eichhorn states that this being is referenced in what is known as the 3 days of darkness of the Book of Exodus. In the Quran, Islamic scholars note similar references made to it in regards to the fires of the afterlife itself, with some even stating that it's literally the first jinn of the father of all jinn, noting Surah 15:27 from the Quran as evidence for the origin of the jinn. It is a consensus among many scholars that this reference should not be taken literally as a description of a singular entity, but instead as the chemical properties related to the fire that created them. If we're to assume that it's a singular entity, that would make it one of the oldest supernatural forces recorded in history. But could this ancient being be responsible for the string of anomalous fires occurring across Turkey in the 21st century? So could this elder jinn known as the poisonous wind perhaps be one of the Djinn Kings itself? In earlier episodes, we have briefly covered the attributes and domains of these immensely powerful entities, and his powers certainly match at least one of them. However, what is less known is how long they can live for, how much of our understanding of them is only folklore and fantasy, and what their current statuses are today in the 21st century. The 9th century Persian scholar Al-Tabari and several other medieval scholars have offered many interpretations for the nature of this ancient being, bouncing between a metaphorical one, where it's nothing more than anthropomorphization of naturally occurring fire that we see in nature, such as the sun, to an interpretation where it's considered an actual sentient being. For example, concerning the former, the cosmographics from the medieval ages of Islam usually depicted the sun setting on the gates of hell itself, deriving its heat from the fires of hell. Outside of the Islamic tradition, the concept of the jinn has a rich and varied history in North Africa and the Middle East. Prior to the advent of Islam, different cultures in the region held their own beliefs and mythologies regarding supernatural beings that shared similarities with the concepts of jinn. Historians say that these beliefs were influenced by a blend of ancient civilizations, folklore, and local traditions. For example, in pre-Islamic Arabian beliefs, Arabian tribes held diverse beliefs about supernatural entities. It's within pre-Islamic Arabia where we could possibly get an understanding of this specific type of aggressive entity that earned it the name the poisonous wind. Within pre-Islamic poetry and literature, these beings were portrayed as spirits dwelling in deserts, abandoned places, and ruins. Like in later regional traditions, some were considered evil, while others were considered protectors of natural places like mountains, springs, and trees. However, its name when referenced was typically associated with something dangerous, manifesting in nature as a whirlwind made from heat. This takes us back to 2021 and the Dadili family case study, in a manner similar to the Toprak family manifestations a decade earlier. An investigation was launched by the Dadili's district authorities. The Kastamonu chief public prosecutor office was eager to get to the bottom of this mystery before it potentially descended into a media circus involving local politicians, like before. According to press reports under the instructions of the Kastamonu Chief Public Prosecutor's Office, several teams affiliated with the Kastamonu Provincial Gendarmerie Command were assigned to the Dildili home where the phenomena would manifest. The Chief Public Prosecutor's Office issued a press release to the media stating that this latest supernatural manifestation had a rational explanation. The office stated that as a result of the extensive meticulous research carried out by the teams, it was determined that the fires were started by a member of the Dadili family living at home to create a mysterious situation. While it may appear that this one particular case study seemingly had a rational explanation, what about the numerous other anomalies erupting across the country and even around the world that have no rational explanation? In the Kuwaiti case study, at the beginning of the episode, where the press reported on the individual whose spontaneous combustion was so powerful that its shockwave caused extensive damage to his and the neighboring apartments while leaving no trace of a fire behind. According to some experts on Middle Eastern folklore, such a phenomena should not be classified as an example of malicious entity interacting with a human, but as a result of a human and a jinn interacting with each other out of love. How? Let me explain. In a 2022 paper, Abdullah, a Quranic scholar and researcher, noted that while similar phenomena that have been recorded throughout history have been scientifically explained as occurring due to a cocktail of fats, acetone, and alcohol causing the human body to ignite from within. He believes that in some cases where a rational explanation is impossible to be applied, the victim may actually be the result of a union between the jinn and the human. In his detailed research of the phenomena, he coined the term spontaneous, fiery human jinn combustion. Referencing multiple case studies over the past century, he concluded that the mixing of the two species can potentially create chemically unstable offspring. Now, how scientifically or even theologically valid his conclusions are is debatable, but at the very least, it provides another perspective science has yet to form a consensus on. In conclusion, while the jinn remained an accepted yet unseen part of reality, their opportunity to interact with the world of humans is rare and highly unlikely according to Islamic scholars, as there is a veil between their dimension and ours. As for the Toprak family in Turkey, to this day, the true nature of the phenomenon remains a mystery. But what do you think? Sound off in the comments, like, and subscribe, and see you in the next one.